Okay. So my name is Jan Piasecki, and I'm assistant professor at the Department of Bioethics and Health Psychology at the Jagiellonian University Medical College in Krakow, in Poland. And generally, my main interest is in research ethics, as well as I teach clinical ethics to medical students. But for several years, since 2020 to 2024, I was involved in the project, which was funded by EA grants, which concern misinformation on social media. And today I'm going to talk about pandemic, free speech, and social media. And one of the things that I would like to discuss with you is this task of finding some kind of a balance between, on the one hand, freedom of speech in a democratic society, public good, which is sometimes embedded in the as a public health, and protection against misinformation, especially on social media. And I would like to conclude at the end with some principles or solutions for communication, especially when we talk about health advocacy, that I think could enhance trust between general public and health practitioners, especially those who involve in public health advocacy. But in the way, I will also share with you some results of our empirical studies about attitudes towards free speech and possible limitations of free speech on social media. Uh, but let's say generally, I would like to talk about ethical aspects of regulating speech, both when in the respect of social media companies, what kind of incentives or nudges within social media or ethical restrictions on speech we can think of. And as I already mentioned, what about the researchers? So how they should participate in public discourse? What is ethical advocacy? How we should mm, address and explain experts' disagreement and possible disciplinary consequences and so on. But right now, I would like to focus also on our, let's say, core intuitions, and I would like to ask you a question: what you think about those issues? So that's why I prepared two surveys. So please, if you can, please scan the QR code and go online and try to vote. Uh, that's the first. That's the first scan. If you have any problems or something like that, please let me know. I haven't seen that anyone voted yet. Is everything okay with the study? Because I can't see. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just because I'm too like too impatient. You need some.
No, 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 no. Let me see. So they need to scan that, right? Hi, guys.
I can't see your results yet, and I'm like, so let's wait a little bit more. If
It won't let me sign in because I'm not part of the university.
okay, so there is a problem with this link, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I will do like this. Okay, thank you for this.
Yeah, me too. I couldn't sign in as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going like this.
And I just posted, I was unable to sign in as well.
Okay. Could you please? Sorry, it's my fault. I didn't realize that.
It required university email. It doesn't work with the personal email.
Great, thank you, thank you. Could you try one more time? If it doesn't work, I'm sending you the right link in the chat. Just in this chat. Okay, so that's the link for everyone to be able to access. Sorry, is the
Yeah, that one works. Thank you so much.
okay? Thank you. I see that some of you already responded to the first one. So you can go to the second one. I also sent the link in the chat, the right wing, I hope.
I got it. Okay.
Okay, so right now you can see my the results of this. Let's wait for the results of the second as well before we discuss it a little bit closely. Okay, so I think that everyone who is eligible to vote and who also wanted to vote already voted. So we have just four responses, and the first four questions are about free speech. And the first question is every social media user has always right to say whatever she or he wants. So only two of you agreed with this response and two of you didn't. This is, of course, a very general statement, but we may say that a free speech absolutist would say that, of course, on social media, we have always the right to say whatever we want. Yeah. So what is the justification to limit someone free speech on social media in the context of pandemic? What do you think? What was also your thinking about this?
I think spreading misinformation in the context of pandemic can be very harmful for the society and the people. I mean, in the context of pandemic, there's a lot of panic, and the spreading misinformation can really be can enhance uh, can stay, can make people more free, more scared, and maybe it can generate antisocial behavior. Like for example, we have seen with COVID-19, where a lot of misinformation about vaccine. And
Mm-hmm.
most of vaccine were effective and safe, and many people doesn't want to take vaccine because of misinformation, and it make them subject to they can have COVID, and they can die for because of the misinformation. I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's say in different countries, of course, we have a different standards on when the governments or other actors can impose any restriction on speech. And for instance, let's say in US is quite famous for a very high standards on this. But what you are saying, Nadia, so you said, I think two very important things. So you said for the first thing that during the pandemic there is the panic and there is this risk of, let's say, dissolving social order, the social order that we are used to, because of the panic, because of the health emergency, can be somehow disrupted and even dissolved. So the social norms that usually control our behavior, because of this panic, because of the social disruption, are not present anymore. And the second thing that you said, a person who is on social media can use speech in order to further, let's say, disrupt the social order, to sow panic, and because of that, it could, let's say, it could bring some kind of additional social risk, and it may have like important costs in human life and in human health. I see that Kathy wants to weigh in. Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, yes. First of all, you gotta look at my background. I am a lawyer, so I will go with that caveat. But I've always been a strong opponent from the United States and the First Amendment. However, my concern as far as unfettered, just total freedom of speech and social media is that there's no way of knowing whether or not that information is the opinion of the writer or the speaker, or whether or not it is supported. We're even seeing more of a problem in the United States with the amount of misinformation that is being put out, not necessarily by anybody who's just posting freely, but by those in power and regulatory agencies and so much. So we don't know, is that information being put out by my neighbor who doesn't have any training whatsoever in infectious disease and infectious control, or is it by somebody who appears to be somebody who has knowledge and what it's based on? Other concerns that I see in this realm, I also get the caveat that I am a resident of Florida, where there's no regulation as to anybody putting out any incorrect and misinformation. So my total advocacy for freedom of speech under the First Amendment is somewhat contained in that freedom of speech in and of itself is not unlimited. We cannot walk into the old standard of the movie theater and yell fire when there's no fire. I think the same should apply when we are looking at what are the limitations of freedom of speech onto social media whenever it is leading to, certainly as to damage as to public health and exposing people into inherently dangerous situations.
Yeah, I didn't. I have to admit that I didn't hear probably the beginning of what you say. But let me summarize it, and if what I'm saying is incomplete, please correct me. So basically, what you are saying is that there is this very important value of free speech. It's our autonomy, is rooted in our autonomy, and there is this concern, let's say, who controls the speech, who controls the controllers. So what is the, we may say that, okay, this is a good rule, and this is a good principle in abstract, that there is no absolute free speech, but in concreto, in this situation, who is going to decide? Yeah, is some kind of a bureaucrat who doesn't have knowledge, is someone who doesn't do his or her due diligence, and so on. So we may think that this is not good to say wherever we want to say in every situation, but on the other hand, having more free speech is better than to limit free speech by those who are just the censors and who are cutting free speech or slashing it without any, let's say, justification. And another thing in what you say, I think it's also important that, let's say, in any theater or we don't have a censors who are looking in order to prevent people from screaming. So, for instance, if you are in the theater, you can scream or even throw a raw tomato at actors. Yes, but there is no prevention, and you can be punished just after the fact. So only the presence of the punishment works as a deterrent. Yeah. So
Yes.
from what you're saying, I also imply that maybe we should have some kind of a deterrence, but it doesn't mean that we have to be proactive.
Right. And even if it's a matter of like, how do you determine that if Nadia, who's a medical doctor, post, she's doing it with the medical background, but if, again, I'm using my neighborhood post on social media post, is there any clarification as to where that person is coming from in their speech? And also, though, I don't want to digress too far, we also have, again, speaking as to the law in the United States, the issue of freedom of speech is essentially as to government control, where you're getting to more of a problem that's then the government step in and act on as some type of censors to social media, because the issue of freedom of speech really goes to the issue of, is it the government controlling or is it the private entity? But look at, we're in a crisis during a pandemic. It was a public health crisis. It was an emergent situation. And to post there where there's going to be the definite effect of the harm.
Yes, I see that Isokan also want to weigh in. Please go ahead.
So thank you so much. In addition to the fact that there are issues about unverified information that release fear and misinformation, also social media could be used as a tool of propaganda. So I'm streaming from Nigeria. I was saying during the pandemic, we had people just finding information and sharing on social media and on different platforms. And then you ask them, where did you get this information from? Have you verified? And many people just forward what they know nothing about, and they can't take responsibility for their post. So it means that they are not even sure of the information they share before they send it out there into the social media space. Thank you.
So if I understood you correctly, is that health misinformation can be used by some people as a propaganda in order to also sow some kind of a social disorder or this kind of, let's say, uncertainty about institutions.
Yes, so I can give you an
trust.
example.
Yes, I think that this is also a fact. Yes, that when we talk about social media, we may assume that people with whom we interact are just another people like me, like us. But the truth could be different, and they are, let's say, paid actors, and even they can be working in cahoots with certain bad actors which just want to, let's say, influence our behavior at the voting booth or something like that, that they want to influence the democratic process somehow. Okay, so the other questions here were also about not only about the general principles, but also about the social media companies. And here I think here I see that our sentiments are a little bit split, and some of you voted that yes, that social media should never label any information created by users. Here we have a a certain advantage of those who don't want this kind of interference. So let's look at the second short study. And this is about the punishment. So the first question was, social media platform should have a right to temporarily ban users who spread misinformation on infectious disease outbreak. And here, most, like all of you said yes. The second question was, social media platforms should have a right to permanently ban users who spread misinformation. And you said, most of you said yes, that social media platforms should have this right. And the third question was, the government should have a right to demand social media platforms to ban users spreading health misinformation during an infectious disease outbreak. 6 of you said yes. And the same was about spreading health misinformation and fining those who spread it. Any comments on those issues? What would be the, let's say, the function of these punishments or fines? How, what is the ethical justification for them? Yes, Nadia, please go ahead.
I think the social companies for the companies for social media have a moral duty. I think as they have the platform for social media, and the people come and spread misinformation, there is a part of the moral duty due to the company. So I think that the companies have the right to ban the users who are spreading misinformation, because they use their platforms, and indirectly the companies are spreading the information too.
I think that this is a very important voice, because you are saying that social media are actors in this situation, and there are certain moral obligations which they bear, and one of this moral obligation is to curate the space they are creating. Yes, so they cannot say, oh, this is just the space that is used by users, but actually they bear responsibility for creation of the space, for design of the space, and actually what is happening in that space. So we should not, because in the US, let's say US laws hinge on this, let's say, distinction between news infrastructure and editorial powers of newspapers and television. So if you are a newspaper, TV channel, or something like that, then you can be sued for spreading false information and for not editorializing, and you have to do due diligence to check the information if it is correct. But in case of social media, the laws were shaped after the let's say, after the laws that regulated phone companies and communication on the phone, which didn't have the right to let's say, to interrupt and somehow censor exchange between users, and because of that, they don't, in the American system, they don't have it. They don't have these powers. But you are saying, okay, but this is a peculiarity of American system and American law, but it doesn't mean that from the moral, ethical point of view, this is right. Because if you create a certain medium, if you create a certain instrument, you have a moral responsibility for maintaining ethical use of that instrument. And this is instrument that allows us to create messages that can be false and true and spread them among other users. And this spread can be also let's say harmful in some cases, or defamatory. Anyone else would like to weigh in on this issue? Kathy, as a lawyer who especially know the U.S. System, would you like to comment on this?
For the U.S. system, I'm just the whole part of it. I find very disturbing as to where we're going in the U.S. right now as to the issue of spreading misinformation, and the reality of going forward in any type of a lawsuit as to social media, as to the protections that are there. But I think that there needs to be, again, basically there needs to be some level of clarification as to who is posting and the basis for that. I don't see this being an area where it can be really litigated. What are you going to do? Sue the social media platforms in the United States are very protected as to even obtaining information as to the source of posting too. So there's multiple variables onto that. And I think that we're seeing more and more of a problem, trying not to be too clear, but seeing more and more of a problem whenever the current administration is involved in spreading a lot of the misinformation too. When we look at when we've got an anti-vax proponent in charge of the agencies that are, should be overseeing vaccination. When we are looking at that point, I think that we really need to look at that and consider the whole aspect of it. And how do you stop it? If you're looking at even going into social media to get information as to who posted, what was posted, etc., that information is so protected, we can't even get it. And a legal perspective, you can't necessarily obtain as to who posted onto Facebook, LinkedIn, X, even into criminal. So there's so many restraints onto that. There needs to be a level of basic moral responsibility into what one is posting.
Yes. Okay. So this is basically, these are the questions. Right now, of course I do not want to resolve the ethical problems and legal problems which are entangled in these questions, but these are those questions that we can ask in order to try to analyze this situation of who is responsible, what are the moral obligations of the actors, and what can we do in terms of policy when we think about curbing misinformation on social media. But right now, I would like to give you a small puzzle. So there is this information which says there is increasingly robust evidence on an association between vaccination with mRNA COVID vaccines and myocarditis. So who do you think posted this on Twitter? Can you guess? Okay, so I will tell. Yes, Isakan would like to guess. Please go ahead. You are muted. Yeah.
Okay, I was asking, you want us to comment this information on social media, right?
Yes. So who could post that information on social media? What kind of an actor could post this kind of information?
Yeah, sorry, I may not we wouldn't just post of information because it's going to be unverified, and the data so would not have been. But I want to let you know that there were a lot of misinformation, like concerning the COVID vaccine. For instance, okay, Africa in Nigeria, people began to come up with propaganda. Saying it can make you infertile. So there are a lot of misinformation like that and cannot be tracked nor verified. So I just want to comment that that's true. That happens. Thank you.
Unfortunately, there was some, I don't know whether it's a problem with my connection with yours, but I couldn't hear you very well. But what I understood is that you said something about verification of this information, that we cannot, that this is certain information about vaccines and which are linked to myocarditis, but we cannot really verify those information. Yes, Nadia, you also wanted to say something?
Yeah. I think the person who make this post is not a scientist. I'm not sure who is, but it's not scientist. The post is made in the way that it look like a scientific information, but there's increasingly robust evidence. If it was a scientist, the evidence will be described. And I think it's fake news. I'm not sure, but I think it's fake news. I am pretty sure it's not scientists.
I can tell you that this is a very tricky question because you don't know who is posting that information, and this is just a part of information. But right now I can tell you and reveal that this is not a fake news, and actually this was a communication of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization in UK, and this was a part of the discussion that was present in social media. So this committee analyzed the data, and they come into the conclusion that there is increasingly robust evidence of an association between vaccination, and they were weighing in on the policy which required 12 to 15 years old to be vaccinated at that time. And of course, still, this is about the developing situation. Yes, so there was an official body of the UK government which served for the UK government, and they presented such of information, and this information was present in the public. And of course, everybody would like to respond, to say something about this. And one of the persons who also let's say who also published posts about those issues on Twitter at that time was Professor Chris Whitty, who was chief medical officers in UK, and he also a representative of a governmental body, had a different opinion. So now they take into consideration and issue a recommendation for vaccination of children between age to 12 and 15. And one reason is that they would help to reduce disruption to education. And of course, we can assume that British citizens who see it on Twitter would like to discuss this issue also on Twitter with the different agendas of UK's government, and they would like to take part in this, let's say, public debate. But here you can see that this tweet had 288 retweets, and it had 501 comments. So what do you think? What kind of information, of tweets we can find in these comments. What people were saying, what can be found below this tweet, and we have to take into consideration that this is the result from, let's say, 6 months ago, when I look at this tweet, when I was putting this presentation together. And of course, since 2021, Twitter or X could put down certain messages. So that's maybe not the original response for this tweet. So what we can expect down the line. If you guess that this is a lot of misinformation, then you are right. Yes. So these are just a few posts that I collected from this 500 comments. A lot of misinformation. And now the question, of course, is what we are doing with this fact that, on the one hand, we have a public debate which concerns British citizens, and which also is held in order to inform them what to do about their kids, what kind of decision to take, to make, and at the same time, this space is flooded by a lot of, let's say, false and possibly even harming misinformation. And any comments or voices about this? How we can, let's say, facilitate the, let's say, justified, legitimate discussion about the risks, about the values which are associated with different policies, and at the same time protect people from flood of misinformation. Is that even possible? Maybe this is impossible and we have to just accept it as it is. What are your thoughts about it?
I think the communication is the key. As the space was flooded, I think here the government has to communicate with people and give them the right information. I think the communication is the key. When we have a true communication by specialists, we can trust them. But when no one give us information, we will trust anyone who will give us any information. I think the communication is the key.
Yes, that's true. But here we have two experts. And there is this disagreement about experts. Yes, they have, because, let's say, recommendation for the policies are not based only on facts, but they based also on the perception and assessment of risk. So I guess that this committee on vaccination, they had different things in mind that the chief health officer of the UK government. The government thought about disruption in school, but the committee on vaccination thought more about well-being of teenagers and possible risk, and the possible benefits for the children. And I think that this is not fully for experts to decide. This is to decide for the society, which is more important. And usually we will have this kind of the discussion in the parliament, in the public sphere. We want to, let's say, take our stance and influence it. But at the same time, this discussion is hijacked by this kind of bad actors. Yes.
I'm sorry, I have just to finish my comments. I mean, when we don't have a full information, it's still the communication is important. Like WHO make when it was a COVID-19, some questions, the most common questions, like for example, we have here breaking news, people are dying, etc. Are this question right? No, it's not right. Are we sure the vaccine? No, we are not sure. I mean, we have to put the most common questions with what we have as information, the information which are sure, and what we don't know. It's important. It's really important to clarify to people, because when the specialists and the government don't communicate, as citizen, as parent, as a teenager, I will trust anyway anyone who will say anything. But when there is a structured information given by the government, the specialists, I won't trust any charlatan. I mean,
That's true. Isakal, please, because you also want to comment.
Okay. So what I understand from the question is, you're trying to say what's to be done to manage this kind of information. And I'm aware that what organizations do is that they actually employ an agent. They employ somebody whose eyes is on the media to deal with such misinformation. Because, like you have rightly said, whatever information is given there, for instance, the example you're making was given by two authorities. So I guess it's left for the public to take informed decisions. Throughout this workshop, we've been talking about informed consent and informed decisions. So the data is there, the study is there, and the two positions are placed to the public. Then they have to make the decision. They have to make the right decision after considering the positions. Thank you.
Yes, I think that because if I understand if I understood you correctly, you are saying that there are let's say that this is not for the public to decide on this on this on this, but there are certain bodies, for instance, the government, who takes responsibility for this kind of decision. Yes. So, for instance, in that case, that was ultimately Prime Minister Boris Johnson who decided, based on those recommendations, which is the right course of action. Yeah. So he received one recommendation from the Joint Vaccination Committee and one recommendation from the Chief Medical Officer, and he made decision. And later on, he also took political responsibility for this. So he could be re-elected, or he can be just thrown out of the politics. Yes. And that's true, but also I would ask, I would say that from the point of view of Boris Johnson, of the politician, it's always important to hear what are the voices of the society. Yes, and social media is also the tool to listen to the people what they are saying. Yes, so good leaders usually do not make those decisions only based on what they think is right, but they consider what people think about those issues as well. Okay, so I would like to right now to go to the second case. The second case is yes. So right now we are talking about the challenge of discussing controversial issues of social media. And here is the second issue. So, as you probably remember, during the COVID, Sweden was one of those outlier in Europe, and from the onset of the pandemic, public health agency in Sweden embarked on de facto herd immunity approach, and they allowed community transmission to occur relatively unchecked. There was no mandatory measures to limit crowds on public transport or in shopping malls. While they just recommended a limit of 15 people for gatherings as of March 29, 2020. So at that time, Poland, for instance, was under a full lockdown. You couldn't even go to a forest for a walk. Yes. And coronavirus testing, contact tracing, source identification recommended by WHO was also limited. And here I'm reading from the article on this topic. And in late June 2020, Swedes established a national committee to examine how Sweden is handling the pandemic. And the committee issued a report by February 25th of 2022. And what we can read in this report. So in report says that the death rates were high in the spring of 2020, but overall excess mortality in 2021 was just plus 0.79%, which was lower than in many other European countries. And this commission suggested that the voluntary measures that were adopted were appropriate to maintain Swedes' personal freedom during the pandemic. However, more extensive and earlier measures should be taken, especially during the first wave. So they have this let's say outliner approach, not really followed by other countries, and they have relatively quite good results. But against that backdrop, I think this case is quite interesting, and this is a case of a public health and pediatrician doctor, Professor Jonas Ludvigsson, and he published a letter in New England Journal. It was a research letter in New England Journal of Medicine in January 2021. And in that letter, he wrote that relatively few children were ill from COVID-19, and he reported, this on this multi-inflammatory syndrome linked to COVID, that only 15 children were hospitalized, and they were, let's say, cured without biggest problem. I think that there was no death of those children in this period. And after that, Ludvigsson was bombarded with angry messages on social media, because people didn't like, let's say, this message, and consider both Swedish strategy and the fact that it didn't, let's say, cause immediately clearly visible bad results, I would say. And he experienced a lot of stress, and because of the stress at that time, he said that he wanted to quit research and medicine. So we can also ask the question about about how we can protect those who question scientific consensus. Yes. What do you think? What are your thoughts about this case? Any comment on this one? Okay, so let's focus on this more general question. Why do we need, for general reasons, freedom of speech in a democratic society? What are your ideas? Do we need freedom of speech, or this is something, let's say, extravagant that is not really necessary?
We do.
We do. Linda, why?
Because if we didn't, I think it's like we are controlling or only selecting those who meet our agenda, for example. So no, we do need this variety of opinion, of whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so what Linda says is that we are partial, that we only see the world from our perspective, and we don't consider other perspective, other inputs. And free speech is something that allows us to see more than we can see, that we alone can see. Yes.
Exactly.
Nadia.
I think when someone give us something new and it's not with the conviction of the society, he will pay the price. I mean, in the history, Copernic said the Earth is turning around the sun. I mean, he was murdered. And each time we have something, even if we are right, but the society wouldn't doesn't accept, we will pay the price. And I think it's what happened to Professor Jonas. I mean, in Europe, everyone was scared with the COVID-19 and telling them that Swedish could preserve the liberty and freedom of people and have better results. It's something shocking for people, for the most scientific society. I can understand why they reject him.
Yeah, Copernic likely was not persecuted. He published his book when he was already at the almost at the deathbed. Any backlash came after his death. But you are right that a lot of people who talk against the already established truth or paradigms, they very often face this kind of a backlash, and that's why, let's say, this is very difficult to change public opinion, and you and from what you are saying is that we need freedom of speech, because even in the environment of freedom of speech, let's say, if there is no censorship, and there is no institution that proactively censor what is printed or what is said, even in that situation, we have such social structures that disincentivizes
Exactly.
speaking against existing consensus.
Exactly, that's what I mean. I mean, even if in democratic society, when we have the theoretically the right to speak and with freedom, but there's a structure of the society, even the scientific society. When you say something against what the most of people think it's true, you will be rejected.
That's true. That even I think that we can see that this backlash that Dr. Ludwigson experienced was from the people who lived in the democratic society where freedom of speech is, let's say, standard, and also those people who sent him angry messages or derogatory messages on social media, they also, let's say, were exercising their free speech right. Yes. So that's the paradox, that on the one hand, free speech enables us to speak freely, but also enables others to speak freely. And one's free speech is not necessarily, let's say, pleasant for my ears. Not only in terms that it doesn't congrue with what I think, but sometimes can directly harm my feelings uh, or even let's say call for some kind of action against me. Yes.
But I think freedom is not insulting others. I mean, my freedom ends when began your freedom. And if I use freedom to insult someone, it's not a freedom anymore.
Yes, that's. I think that generally speaking, I agree. But in practice, I think it is very difficult to find this balance. Yes, because we don't know in advance. We don't know a priori without experience uh, what can be offensive for other people. Yes, and we negotiate it what can be offensive. Yes, I see that Kathy wants to say something.
Yeah, and I agree with Nadia. I think that finding the balance is so very difficult. And a lot of what we look at in bioethical analysis and also in law is finding a balance. But again, freedom of speech, expressing one's ideas, one's thoughts, I think is so inherently important, but there's got to be a level of limitation, something threatening. And freedom of speech cannot go to the point of hate speech or of threatening. Giving the opinion that if somebody writes on something I posted or I published that, Kathy Lively sounds like a babbling idiot, that's an opinion and expressing a view. But if somebody's actually making a threat that could be as to my physical safety, I think there's going to be where the line has got to be drawn. You cannot be making threatening and you cannot advocate saying we're going to go with hate speech. It's a matter of finding the balance and where do we draw that line. So again, I think freedom of speech is inherently important. We need that in a democratic society. However, again, I think there needs to be a level of limitation when it goes to something that is to the point of actually threatening through threatening violence against the individual or harm to a person or their family.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that there is this limit of like immediate and direct threats that we can make against someone else. But on the other hand, when we think about insult or hurting someone's feelings, that's let's say I would never call anyone idiot. Yes. I never would even dare to think that when someone, let's say in my class, says something that I don't agree or not fully understand, that this is stupid. Yes, but of course, some people have different attitudes, and they will call someone an idiot, and they think that they are in the right because that was idiotic what they're saying, and I can understand, and why I'm not using this because I know that it could be really harmful. Yes, and I don't want
Right.
to hurt someone's feelings. Yes, I really do consider those feelings, and I think, but at the same time, sometimes I know that I'm saying something which is uncomfortable. Yes, when we discuss different different issues, especially ethical issues. For some people, for instance, even discussing things like euthanasia or abortion, or it could be painful, not only because they have a different ideological stand, but because they experience something painful in their life. And when I say abortion, they are thinking about certain moment in their life that they felt low, and they recreate that moment, and they don't feel okay with that. Yeah, so that's the sphere when it is very difficult to a priori, let's say, without experience, find the right mode of communication. Any other idea or comment? Why do we need a free speech?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd like to say something.
yes.
I'm unable to access the raised hand. Okay, so when we talk about freedom of speech and the society, just like you said, the poster has the freedom to post, and whoever is commenting also has the freedom to comment. So, however, I believe one approach to this kind of things is there's a on social media where you can make a post and you can see your comments towards the post. You can see the comments because yeah, you want to help to see, you want to give them information, but we need to also understand that people that are on social media, they don't really go there to be helped. Sometimes they just want to go there to play. And because some of them are incognito, you don't know who they are, they have also the freedom to say whatever they want to say. So I think the best approach is, if you really have something you want to share with society, you just share whatever you want to share and switch or comment to that. But the issue is that the way social media is designed is it makes the comments that people say, reactions to people, it makes it so important that people really want to hear reactions. But I think if you think the information you're posting is accurate, then you don't really need anybody to comment on what you want to say. You just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comment on this issue? If not, I can go to the list that I composed based on literature, my own ideas, and I have to admit, here I also used ChatGPT. I ask him what are the. I give him a few initial reasons why we do need freedom of speech, and I think that half of this list is created by ChatGPT. So we need free market of ideas. This is a place when we can generate ideas about work. Also, scientific progress depends on freedom of speech. Yes, many times people disrupt existing consensus, and thus disruption. This challenge to the consensus was at the beginning of scientific progress. We also need, and this is, I think, one of the most important issues, freedom of speech because of democratic self-governance. There is no real democracy without freedom of speech. Also, freedom of speech helps us to build trust in institutions. If we can, let's say, freely express our attitudes towards different institutions, and if those institutions can also, let's say, defend themselves and present themselves in a transparent way in a public spheres, that doesn't undermine the trust to those institutions, but paradoxically it builds the trust to institutions. Also, freedom of speech helps us to manage conflict in a peaceful manner. When we have a conflict, when we cannot talk about this and the conflict has to be resolved, then we probably do it in a non-peaceful way. Yes, when we can talk about issues, when we can discuss them, we can see that those conflicts can be resolved in a peaceful manner. Also, when we think about democratic self-governance, this is clearly linked to the personal dignity and autonomy. We should speak freely because we are autonomous human beings. But on the other hand, because we are autonomous human beings, we don't want to be governed by autocrats. We want to participate in the government, and one way to participate in the government is to have a democratic system. And in that sense, it also legitimizes a political process. So if we can participate in a democratic process, this process also gains this kind of ethical justification for us. We can also we also use public freedom of speech in order to resolve and decide disagreement between experts. As we saw already, experts sometimes disagrees, and they have to, let's say, these disagreements has to be pronounced and see, but also the public sometimes has to, or in the name of the public, some legal authorities have to make those decisions also in a transparent way, and in a way that they are also politically and sometimes even legally responsible for those decisions. Also, we need freedom of speech because we balance different values and different interests. I think that Linda already spoke about this, that whenever we are talking, we are expressing our own perspective, but we didn't see our own ideas. And when we have a freedom of speech, we have this occasion to see other perspectives, and we can balance different values. We already said something about challenging status quo. Accountability and check on power is also important, and is also the part of this democratic self-governance. It's also important for maybe not error detection, but error detection in the sense that it became public, that we can publicize certain errors, and we can include also marginalized perspective if we have a freedom of speech, and this is also related to this market of free market of ideas, that many different perspectives can be seen. So in that sense, we can clearly see that freedom of speech is a condition sine qua non for democracy. So necessary condition for democracy. It means that without that condition, there is no democratic state. And but of course, we can ask how exactly public free speech, public discourse should look like in order to legitimize policy making, and what is the reality of the public discourse. And one of the argument which is given by German philosopher Jürgen Habermas is that in order to legitimize the public policies, the discussion and the public discourse should be accessible to everyone, and the reason for certain policies should be present in the public sphere. However, we can realize that we don't agree on the moral principles, but we agree on the moral political procedure, and in that sense, public debate is a part of democratic procedure, and that's why public debate must be accessible to everyone. However, and as we know, citizens in a pluralistic democratic society do speak in different moral languages. For instance, and of course, this is a some simplifications, but it presents one aspect of this moral differences, is that religious truths are not accessible to non-believers. And at the same time, secular political order does not have the same evident moral foundations for believers. And that's why we need to make this situation somehow even. So Jürgen Habermas proposes that everyone must make some effort, both believers and non-believers. And the effort of the believer consists of acknowledging the secular democratic order, and religious and the effort of the non-believer consists of translating religious argument in a way that they can be expressed in public debate and be accessible also for non-believers. And this situation creates this kind of a peaceful democratic discourse and debate that brings that justification for public policies. So the binding political decision require those secular justification. Non-believers should take religious contributions seriously, and religious arguments are, as I already said, translated into language which is accessible to all. But of course, this debate, this debate as this described by Jürgen Habermas, is just an ideal. But in the real world, this public debate is challenged and is interrupted by different forces. And here we can think about exterior interference, like bots, coordinated manipulations by foreign actors, farm trolls, which are, let's say, paid by foreign governments. And here I make a very overt allusion, of course, to the farm bots which were found in St. Petersburg, but also to the internal polarization. That let's say the democratic process is only partially peaceful. Only partially it is a debate where we really like to understand each other. And here I would like to focus on the book which was published in 1991. It was written by James Davison Hunter, Culture Wars, the struggle to define America, making sense of battles over family, art, education, law, and politics. And I think that this is, I read this book not so far ago, just a few years ago, and I was really astonished how actual and really relevant this book is. However, it describes a situation which was happening since the 70s and 80s in the US, in the US politics, and which is still happening. So on the one hand, we have this idealized public discourse, and on the other hand, we have this culture war. And what are the culture wars? The culture wars are conflicts within national elites. And Hunter defines national elites as the groups of people who professionally create, interpret, and disseminate cultural symbols and ideas in public discourse. And those include journalists, scientists, politicians, intellectuals, lawyers, religious leaders, and artists. And what are those symbols about? So he made this very important distinction between public culture and private culture. And public culture is those shared symbols, values, and meanings that organize our public life. That there is this public life that everybody participates and is embedded in the public institutions, political institutions, but also academic institutions, all public, let's say, from the public library to the museum, through schools, through agoras. So all those institutions that are publicly accessible. They are shaped in a certain way, and they embodied certain not only symbols but also values. And we want to influence how they actually work, what kind of values they express and transmit to other citizens. And on the other hand, as a contrast, we have this private culture, which is associated with meanings and moral commitments within private lives and families and voluntary association. And cultural war arises when groups seek to impose their version of public good and good life by capturing institutions rather than through democratic procedures and compromise. So, as I already said, on the one hand, we have this procedural approach to democracy where we, in the public discourse, we give justification, accountability, and legitimacy for the public policies which shape those institutions. And that's why those institutions are our common shared institutions. But on the other hand, we have this culture wars when we don't, let's say, participate in a peaceful, let's say, transition of powers and consensus, but we rather think about public institutions as our institutions, which can project our visions of the world and our ideology and worldviews. And so what Davison Hunter says is that culture wars cannot be resolved through debate because they are the opposition of the debate and argumentation. And the opposite sides lack shared moral language and the common standards of discussion. That's why they capture institution rather than persuade. And also, but in the public sphere, in the public sphere, they delegitimize each other. So they say that the other side doesn't have a moral legitimacy in order to participate in a democratic process. And Davison Hunter wrote about different aspects of this culture war. He was talking about family, education, media, art, law, electoral politics. But right now, this war, especially when we think about social media and internet in general, is a kind of a meme war. This is this very interesting, let's say, story about how those cultural meme wars are happening in the social media, and that this is just about United States, but I'm sure that the same is happening in other countries in the world, in Europe, maybe to a different degree, but certainly it's happening. And this meme wars consist of flooding the zone with memes, and is primarily happening online, but the goal is to influence institutions, is to influence political opinions, and in the end change the political reality, and enables people to capture institutions and introduce their values. So we already said, but I would like to reiterate it, that what is at stake. On the one hand, this is a freedom of speech, public good, protection of from health misinformation. And right now I would like to give you some information about about our research that we done about freedom of speech in the United States, and by we I mean the team that I was a part about, that was web immunization research team. So what we did, we our initial question was, what are the ethics of limiting misinformation of social media? And in the first step, we conducted a systematic review of literature in order to create a list of already existing intervention, psychological information that can be deployed on social media in order to somehow curb or fight misinformation online. We finally included 75 papers, and we found 15 different types of interventions that can counter misinformation online. And based on those findings, we created this questionnaire that consists of 13 questions. You already saw some of those questions at the beginning, but our goal was to measure attitudes towards free speech, promotion of media literacy, promotion of health literacy, countering misinformation, and punishing spread of misinformation. As I already said, we focus on the American population. We did a study which was focused on active adult American Twitter users at that time, and we those Twitter users
60 photos have been released from Jeffrey Epstein's estate.
Who consented to share access to their publicly available Twitter profiles. And here I would like also to note that all participants signed informed consent for data processing, and the study was approved by the bioethics committee at our university. And we used Survey Cloud, Survey Company Cloud Research to recruit a total number of 2,997 participants who completed the survey. They were active Twitter users and passed attention checks. And a few things that can be added, that the sample did not match the demographics of the US population or those of Twitter users afterward. However, it was relatively large and composed of genuinely active Twitter users. We verified their activity during the recruitment process. And most of the variables that are included were located on ordinal scale. Non-parametric statistical tests were applied during the hypothesis verification. So for testing differences between groups, we used Mann-Whitney U-test, and for measuring correlation, Spearman-Rank correlation tests. And what were our hypotheses? So our first hypothesis, which were of course based on previous research, primarily concerning attitudes towards speech moderation on social media and misinformation. And our first hypothesis was that political affiliation differentiate attitudes towards free speech and any form of intervention in the information space of social media platform. Specifically, we expected that individuals with more right-wing or Republican views would be more supportive of free speech, while those with more left-wing or Democrat views would be more willing to accept interventions such as promoting media and health literacy, countering misinformation, or even penalizing those who spread misinformation. And our second hypothesis was that there might be a link between susceptibility to misinformation and support for free speech. In particular, we thought that individuals who are more susceptible to misinformation may also be more likely to strongly support free speech policies. And the first hypothesis was grounded in the common sense acknowledged about American politics and society, and it was as well as existing research. And the second hypothesis is based on the following reasoning. If previous studies has shown that right-leaning users are more susceptible to misinformation, if those same users are also more supportive of free speech, then it is plausible that susceptibility to misinformation is also strongly associated with pro-free speech attitudes. And then if we thought that if both hypotheses are supported by data, this would suggest not only politicization of free speech and efforts to counter misinformation on social media, but also that susceptibility to misinformation can be reinforced by a strong demand for free speech and a general skepticism towards content moderation. In that way, this misinformation bubble becomes self-reinforcing, justified by appeals to the political and ethical principle of free speech. So what are our results? Our results support the first hypothesis, showing significant statistical difference between Republicans and Democrats. And Republicans are more likely to believe that social media platforms should allow users to publish and share content freely, and they are more likely to oppose the censorship of users' posts. And two numbers here are important. This is this Z value, which indicates that Republicans ranked free speech statements significantly higher than Democrats. And the number P is also important because it indicates that the difference is statistically relevant. And then there is second slide, which shows that the pattern is reversed when it comes to support for promoting health and media literacy. Here, Democrats are rank those interventions higher, as is shown by Z minus 12. And again, the p-value is statistically significant. In respect to countering misinformation, it is statistically significant difference between individuals identifying as Democrats and Republicans in their support for policies that aim to mitigate health-related misinformation on Twitter, and the same can be said about punishment. That it is also significant between the Democrats and Republicans. Democrats support punishment much more strongly than Republicans. So, what is what is the link between susceptibility to misinformation and attitudes towards free speech? So the second hypothesis. To test the second hypothesis, we used already existing missed 8 scale. This is a scale which was designed to measure susceptibility to misinformation, and the results show a weak but statistically significant positive correlation between support for free speech and susceptibility to misinformation. This suggests that individuals who express stronger support for free speech are slightly more likely to be susceptible to misinformation. While the correlation is small, this trend is consistent. This is also somehow consistent with the previous research, which was done by Kozereva and her collaborators, as well as the Center for Countering Digital Hate. The first study, which was done by Center for the Digital Health, by the Center for Countering Digital Hate, indicated that Americans mostly support regulation of speech, and Kozereva study indicates also that Republicans are much more pro free speech, and of course it says something about how we can later on use this information about attitudes towards free speech and different policies countering misinformation, and think about such policies that will be considered to be legitimized and justified by the users. So the last thing that I would like to discuss, I see that we are already running out of time, so I will try to do it quite quickly. Are challenges for scientific discourse. So what we already said, and here I want to refer to the book which was published by Princeton scholars Stephen McAdoo and Francis Lee. And the main thesis is that we failed during the COVID pandemic, that we failed our commitment to democracy, free speech, and science. And we didn't live up to the ideas of openness and criticism. And dissenting voices were not treated seriously. That was their main statement. And what they went wrong, according to them? We departed from established pandemic preparedness plan. Major interventions were adopted under conditions of deep uncertainty, and democratic deliberation about costs and trade-offs was limited. And at the same time, all dissenting voices were delegitimized and not really seriously debated. So that's why they also wrote this book, and they came to the conclusion, and one of the main justification of this book, that we need kind of a reckoning how we approach discussions and public discourse about public policies, because without this kind of reckoning, we are not able to really combat denialism of all kinds. And we have to protect truth-seeking functions of journalism and science. So we have to encourage dissenting voices, and we have to encourage discussion. And this is need to reduce political bias and polarization. They also realize how much those debates were linked to political identities. They argue that we need to tolerate the dissent and contestation, and we have to do justice to those who bear the burdens of certain policies. So in this book, they make this very strong case for those essential workers who were exposed to much higher risk. And on the other hand, we have those laptop class who can work from the safety of their homes, isolated from other people, from risk. And at the same time, they were already, this laptop class was already better off, and they also took advantage of those people who didn't have this opportunity to be isolated. They were considered to be essential workers, and they have to work and be exposed to the risk. They also realizes that in the discussion discussion of the policies, however it was previously, let's say, very widely acknowledged, we didn't conduct a genuine benefit risk analysis. We very lightly forget about the burdens and the risk which were borne by those who were not privileged. There's also a quite interesting article written by Giubilini and his collaborators about expertise, disagreement, and trust in vaccine science and policy. So they realized that trust, especially the trust to experts and trust to science, depends on moral qualities such as honesty, concern for others, and trustworthiness requires transparency about values, scientific uncertainty, disagreement among experts, and transparency requires also being honest about incompleteness of knowledge. If we don't mention about those things, there is very difficult to rebuild trust and build trust and maintain trust with experts. Also, I want to quote one article or one entry from the quite old article by McKinnon and Weed, which was published in 2002. And this is article on ethics in epidemiology and public health, and they define certain basic terms. So here is how they defined public health advocacy. So they say that the process of that advocacy is the process of supporting legal policy or scientific positions, decisions, and arguments. However, in the same entry about public health advocacy, they say that public health advocacy has acquired a negative connotation. Advocates are perceived as ideological, unyielding, and in conflict with the objectively required for science-based public health decision making. So even before the pandemic, public health advocacy was to a certain extent, let's say, suspicious concept. That's why I proposed a certain certain principles of public health advocacy, of trustworthy public health advocacy, and these are explicitness, transparency, and evidence-based. So explicitness entails that an epidemiologist or public health experts or a physician directly identifies himself or herself as an advocate with the goal of changing public health policy. For instance, during a video, podcast, or on social media, or writing an opinion piece, epidemiologist explicitly states that she is currently an advocate, proponent of a certain policy. Well, what it means that epidemiologist is transparent. So transparency requires making account of values and evidence that drive their arguments. It is not sufficient to advocate just to come up with a catchy slogan or just to say that this is a true or false. Transparency entails disclosing trades-off between values associated with certain policies, for instance, trade-offs for individual freedom and saving lives, and also encompasses justification for public health measures. So trustworthy advocacy requires justifying a public health intervention to the general public. And finally, we have evidence-based. Each policy proposal that is advocated should be supported by evidence, and epidemiologists or public health experts should be ready to change their position, of course, in the when the new evidence comes up. So right now, do you have any questions or comments about what we discussed today? If not, I just want to make some acknowledgements. So those research that I presented to you were done by the web immunization team, and we got also funding from EEA grants. I see that Nicole wanted to say something, please.
Yes, yes. I want to ask, what would you say would define like a public health priority? Like if I were like a public health advocate and I want to talk about something, what do you think would define it as a priority? How would how would someone just choose like what's a priority?
But prioritize in what sense? I'm not sure if I fully understand the premises of your question. So
like prioritize like what issues? Like for example, should they prioritize like a pandemic because it affects more people, or prioritize like other things?
Yes, I think that this is a I don't have a, let's say, authoritative answer to this question. So the first the first idea which may seem obvious is that this is a public health, yes, and public health can be measured in mortality, morbidity, herd immunity, and we should advocate for a policy which has this kind of effects. But the problem is that we can rarely that those public health goals sometimes they are in conflict with other values, and of course, if this is a conflict between, let's say, personal freedom and public health, that probably is a quite easy trade-off and easy situation. So in that situation, public health advocates should just prioritize public health. But there are also situations where it is quite difficult to really estimate what will be, let's say, health results at the end of the certain process. Yes, if we look at, for instance, at Sweden and other countries, even other Nordic countries, Sweden was outlier in terms of their policies, but they didn't have really clearly worse outcomes at the end. Yes, I'm not a public health expert, so I will not discuss it in details and with an authoritative, let's say, justification. But to my knowledge, for instance, they had higher mortality from COVID than some other Nordic countries, but at the same time they had much lower mortality um, from other diseases because they didn't put on hold their whole healthcare systems. And at the end of the pandemic, their overall excessive deaths were not high, were quite comparable with other countries. And we can ask the questions what they prioritized. They didn't forget about public health, but they also, and that was their public health authority which made those decisions, and also to some extent put political took off political pressures from Swedish politicians. And so they were also thinking about other values, and they were thinking, for instance, about educations. They didn't close down the primary schools, and we won't see, and we won't be able to clearly measure the effects of closing down and shutting down schools for long periods of time in other countries, because these are things that are very difficult to measure. But we intuitively can know that there are some repercussions, not only in terms of mental health, that could be somehow seen, but also in other aspects of socialization, be able to enter labor market, and so on and so on. Was my question, let's
Thank
say,
you. Yes. Great. Yeah.
Nadia, I see that you also wanted to say something.
I have just a little technical question about biostatistics. I see you have used mental Marwit test. It's a non-parametric test. Why didn't you use a student test, t-test? The distribution isn't normal?
The distribution isn't normal. Yes, you are right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, any other question? I see that something is in chat. Okay, but this is not. Okay. So if there is no more questions, then thank you very much. It was my pleasure to discuss with you all those issues. If you want to contact me, you can find me on our university website, and I can also show you my email address. Oh, I will just put it into the chat.
They also have it, but you can
Okay.
put it. They have it in the list of
Okay. If you have any comments
speakers
or remarks that you would like to share with me, please go ahead. You are welcome. Thank you again.
Wait, Jan. Great. and I liked it. So I would like you to stay with us for a couple of group photos.
Sure.
I would also ask Ana Cristina to turn on, if she can, the camera, and all the others. We have a problem with these photos, but probably some of them, they don't have cameras. I don't know. They look bad on the group photo. And yeah, I'm a fan of photos, and those are good. And we have to show people that we were doing something, right? We're not avatars. So, okay. But I have this difficulty. So they come with a photo, and the photo looks smaller. So Lazaro, you need a photo. You show your face, please. Okay, Ana Cristina, perfect. The beautiful girl always sends a photo. Crazy. Why are you doing that? And she's the cousin of Nicole, and sending an ugly old photo that doesn't look like you at all. I'm sorry. I'm not there. I shouldn't scold the participants, but we live in a world, Jan, where you have to show off. You have to, and not President Trump, he speaks all the time. He calls people names. Hey, piggy. Hey, but not like that, but nevertheless. All right. So I would like Jan to, and year by year, we see how we look. That's funny. So Charlotte, a little bit closer to the okay. Nicole, Anna, a little bit back from the screen. Anna, the other Anna, closer to the wall. Nicole, can you tell her in Spanish, please? She's too close. The head is too big now. Does she know me? Nicole? Can you hear what I said?
Yes, yeah, I told her. She's just in the hospital. Yeah.
Because the head is too big. Okay, Lazaro, are you there or not? If he's not there, you know what to do, Nicole, right? You hide those black spots.
Okay, so ready? I'm going to take a photo.
Good. All right, I still had, okay, good. So Jan looks perfect all the time anyway. Send me a photo with Wanda, please. And the Christmas guy.
Yeah.
Three. Yeah.
On 3. 1, 2, and 3.
4.
Okay.
4 photos.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Again.
And then another one. 1, 2, and 3.
Great.
And then last one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're all set. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, that's Anita and everyone. That's my cousin. Yeah, my cousin Anna. She's
your cousin Anna is always sending us a photo. Okay, so Jan, thank you so much. Send me a couple of photos with Wanda, wondering about the Santa Claus, right?
Yes. In Poland, on the Christmas Eve, we are visited by the angel, especially here in the Krakow region.
Oh, really? So
Santa
it's not the Santa Claus?
Yes, Santa Claus comes on the 6th of December, and on the 23rd of December comes the angel.
I didn't know that. It's what the Catholics are doing?
No, I don't think that this is a Catholic dogma. I think that this is just a tradition here in South Poland, because in other regions they have different ideas about.
Yeah, okay, I think
the
it's
present
fabulous.
carriers.
She loves it, and the angel gives presents.
Yes, big presents.
Just
like Santa Claus, but it's invisible.
It's invisible.
It's a little bit easier.
Now here we disguise. We are disguised in Santa Claus most of the time when we have kids. Jan, I wish you a wonderful holiday. So big hugs to Wanda, and I hope to see her one day because I saw the photos since she was very young. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I wish you all pleasant end of the year, and yeah,
You need.
thank you very much for the discussions, and
Yeah.
see you
Well,
later. Maybe.
thank you. Thank you. Honored. So